Hello and welcome to the Headache Doctor podcast, where on this podcast, it's our mission to educate and empower everyone with headaches and migraines so that you can break free from a life of fear of your next headache or migraine and dependence on medication. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about the reasons why someone wouldn't get better. Now, you might be thinking that's a weird thing to talk about because we should focus on the things that do get us better. But oftentimes when we understand the problem itself and the barriers that people have for finding relief, then we actually have some action items that we can change, things that we can improve upon. And so understanding the negative gives us a positive in a sense. And so, and the other thing I want to frame around this conversation is that when you've been searching for relief, it's probably not hard for you to think, well, I know a lot of things that prevent me from finding the relief I'm looking for. Or in a sense, you know a lot of things that don't work. And so what I'm talking about here is when we take someone through a process, there is maybe a mindset or a set of behaviors that people have that allow them to find the relief that they're looking for. And so what I want to do is speak to the barriers that are in place for people that even when presented with a solution don't necessarily or aren't able to attain that solution. Okay. Now, what I don't want you to hear is like, oh, it's so simple. Just do it and your life will be rosy and everything will be great. This is really hard stuff, guys. And I don't need to tell you that if you're listening to this and you've been struggling with headaches and migraines, but it's really challenging. One of the main questions I get when I'm just out in the world, right? Talking to people and they hear that I work on headaches and migraines. Like I help people with headaches and migraines. They ask, what's the number one thing I can do? Because it's interesting to talk to someone that treats migraines but doesn't prescribe medication. And so it's natural to ask the question, like, what is one thing I can do? And so I realize that I've struggled to answer that question because there's really not like a one thing. And the reason I'm going into this is because it'll reframe this conversation. But what I would love to do is kind of frame that question in a way that think of like yourself having walked up to a dentist and your teeth hurt, but you've never brushed or flossed. And you ask it and it's like, okay, my teeth hurt. I have cavities. What's the one thing I can do to like help my cavities? Well, you're going to put that dentist in a position where he's like, there's not necessarily like one thing that you can do to like fill all your cavities and fix all your teeth problems. But what you can do that is of more value is put a habit in place and let that habit pay dividends over a long period of time. And that habit would be brushing and flossing, right? So I feel like I'm in a similar situation where someone with headaches and migraines is like, hey, what can I do in order to solve my problem? And basically what we have to do is reframe the question to not look for immediate relief, but for the long term, okay? Like what are the habits that I can put in place that over a long period of time really pay off and add value to my life? Okay, so why do I tell you that? I tell you that because when we think of why people don't find success, it's because number one, they are not necessarily willing or potentially they don't have the motivation to do the long-term change without the short-term sense of relief. Now, I'm not trying to blame anyone or guilt anyone or like, man, it's all on you, just need to try harder. I definitely want to be sensitive of that because the people we work with and likely the people listening to this podcast feel like you've tried a lot and you've put forth the effort. So I understand you just feel beat up. It's like, now, so there's this challenging dynamic. But when people fail to get out of the situation, it's because the healthy habit that they've incorporated, when they don't see this sense of relief, it drops off. We've talked about this before in the podcast. When you're going on this journey of finding relief and you implement something that's healthy, whether that's with your diet, whether that's an exercise routine, whether it's just moving more, whether it's a standing desk, whether it's, taking supplements that have been recommended. Like there's things that are good for your body, that are healthy, that are changes in a generally positive direction that may not immediately impact your headache or migraine situation. And the people that won't find relief will look for that instant sort of gratification. If they don't get it, if they don't see that reduction in their symptoms, then they'll drop that healthy habit, right? And so essentially, we're looking for people that are willing to put in the work over a long period of time in order to make the changes that are needed to solve a problem that took a long period of time to get to where they are today. So just about everyone we see has not gone from like your neck is normal and healthy to like, boom, you woke up one day and now you have a neck problem. The neck problem's been there for a long time. It's just the symptoms, like your brain was largely able to ignore it, and now something sort of like it's the straw that broke the camel's back, and now you have a headache. So just because the onset of symptoms may have been abrupt and sudden doesn't mean the problem itself was. And so oftentimes the solution, we need to have a long-term mindset. So it's the number one thing that when people don't have a long-term mindset in their healing journey, they are less likely to succeed. Okay. Now, when we think about the scenario of, okay, someone not succeeding, what I'm going to add on to that is a sense of someone who's not willing to take ownership for lifestyle changes, for how they live their life, for whether that's, the level of activity, exercise, simple changes that they may incorporate. Maybe they have this perspective of, you just need to fix me, okay? So that piggybacks off the first one. But this perspective of the provider just needs to fix me is a challenging one for us to enter into, because we don't work miracles, believe it or not. We are not a quick fix, and we're definitely not going to enter into a scenario with someone who just takes a passive approach and says like, well, you need to fix me, and if it doesn't work, then you don't know what you're talking about, okay? So that ultra critical mindset is the next one. But essentially what we're talking about here is someone that enters into our program, but just has this mindset of like, I don't necessarily want to have to change my life, but I want the results. And if the solution doesn't fit that, then it's not the solution. And that's a challenging scenario. I mean, imagine someone with lots of cavities, their teeth hurt, right? And it's like, we can fill your cavities, but like, you're just going to be right back in here in maybe 6 months if you don't start taking care of your dental health. And it's like, well, that's too hard. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to brush and floss my teeth every day, or I don't want to, use whatever toothpaste, or stop drinking, 3-4 cans of soda every day. If you're not willing to make those changes, then there really is no solution, because we part of the solution is removing a negative, right? Like, we have to remove a negative, insert a positive, and then when the maths and the equation equals a positive, then we're headed in the right direction, right? But it's this equation of time, right? Like implementing the good things, reducing the bad things, and then adding time. And then when we do that equation well, and we have a positive as a result, and then we add time to it, then we're working towards relief rather than away from it. And so that's essentially the type of relationship we need to enter into, is someone who's willing to take responsibility, who's not just looking for a provider to like fix them without changing any of their lifestyle changes, or entering into their reality and saying, hey, we need to remove these negatives. So we've got to be able to remove the negatives. Okay. And then the third thing is someone who has an overly critical mindset. Okay. And again, what I'll say here is that I'm not looking. So the opposite of this is like, I understand that asking for complete trust right off the bat is a challenging thing for a lot of people. So it's not an expectation. We have a very, like a relatively slow onboarding process. I'm doing this podcast. Like, we do a lot of things to educate people, to get them up to speed. And so we know that people feel beat up, that they feel like they can't trust another provider. But the negative, the person that doesn't do well, is the person that never fully trusts that we can help them or in our process. Okay. So if you're working, and this is true for really any provider that you enter into. Now, it's almost as if we're engaging in a placebo effect. If you'll entertain this thought for just a second, the placebo effect is in everything. Okay. It's not like there's an aspect of medicine or anything in this life that is like absent of a placebo effect, right? So we know that surgeries have placebo effects of like, oh, you go on their knife, there's white coats, these bright lights, like you had an anesthesiologist, you come out, you have a scar, like they stitched you up, like your brain tells you, okay, I'm fixed now. And they've done that with people where they didn't actually like do anything, and then they're better, right? So like there's placebo effects that are even in that level of care, right? Like, and so placebo effect is very much a thing. Now, the opposite of that, you can work against yourself by being overly critical and skeptical. And so when we're onboarding someone, if we get a sense of like this patient is too skeptical, like they're questioning it too much, they're being too critical, if they're not bought into an extent, it's just going to be a barrier and it likely will not work. Now, what does that mean? Now, you may say like, okay, well, I mean, you should be able to take anyone who's even the most critical of your situation, and if they just do it, then they should find relief. Like, and I would say there's a percentage of people, yeah, like if you have like just strictly a mechanical issue, it's very straightforward, and I can start getting you relief relatively quickly. There may be a sense where like you are bought in. I would say if you're still skeptical, you're likely to drop off. Like you have a bad day, you have a bad weekend, you come in and maybe the session didn't go as well. Now, these things are very normal and common, and the skeptical people, the critical people, they fall off, okay? Now, the people that stick with us and have an accurate expectation and trust that we're not just trying to like scam someone, but we're actually trying to help, but understand that the problem is one that takes time, and it's not easy, and it's not straightforward, and it's complicated. And so when we take someone through that process and they're willing to trust us, and it doesn't mean implicit, trust right off the bat, but we build trust over time. That's the patient that we're looking for. Now, so those three things, if we take the opposite of those and we take someone who's really committed over time, they're not just evaluating things in the short term. If we get someone who is not skeptical, who's able to trust the process, and if we flip these things and we get someone who's like committed and they're ready to go and they're willing to stick with us, and they have a bad day and they have a bad week, and they know that what they're doing is healthy and good for them, and they're not just like dropping things because they're inconvenient or hard to do, that's the type of person that we almost always find the relief we're looking for. And it almost doesn't matter the symptom presentation up front, meaning it can be super complicated, very challenging, and oftentimes we are working with people that, man, it is a tough situation and they have tough days, and we have to empathize with them because it's like, man, this is hard. But we know that the journey we're on, we're making progress and we're getting there. Those are the people that no matter, like, I almost want to say no matter what their symptom presentation is up front, because we've dealt with a lot of really complicated stuff, like we can get them to where they need to go. Now, how can you say that? Let me compare this to losing weight, okay? I think this is a good example, not a perfect one, okay? So don't pick this apart too much. If we're trying to lose weight, now you can get someone who's like a straightforward weight loss candidate, okay? Like they had a good metabolism. They just kind of got a little bit like, I don't know, loose with their lifestyle. They ate what they wanted. They didn't exercise. They gained weight. Okay. And it's just like, hey, like, let's just give you the motivation. Let's, reduce the amount of calories, increase the calorie expenditure, start exercising, right? And it's easy. Like it works. You start losing weight. Now, let's say you have someone with like a long health history. Maybe obesity runs in the family. Maybe they have hormonal issues. Maybe there's just barriers in place with lifestyle. Maybe they've never exercised the day before in their life. Maybe they don't know how to cook in the kitchen. Maybe they've just the food environment and the relationship to food has just been so poor that they don't know how to really take those next steps to even be healthy. Okay. Now, that second scenario is going to be a lot more involved, a lot more complicated. Now, what would likely happen in the second scenario and in the first, but more often in the second, is that there's going to be days that are hard and it feels like you went backwards. There's going to be weeks that are hard and it felt like nothing changed. Maybe there's even times where you're like, oh my gosh, I gained weight. Like, how am I gaining weight? Okay. Now, in either scenario, with either patient, with either client, whatever you want to call them, do we question the process? Do we question our bodies responding to reduced calories, increased exercise, let's move more, let's pay attention to what we eat? Do we question those things? I would argue no, because those are things that put us in the direction of improving our health, okay? So again, we're in that scenario. You're removing the negatives, you're putting in the positives, you're getting the equation to equal a positive, and then you're letting time do its thing. And we think of that with diet, we think of that with exercise, we think of that with weight loss. Everyone does. We don't question it. And we don't question the science behind it. If you have a health coach and they say, hey, you need to reduce your calories and exercise more, you think that's bogus. Like I need to see journal articles and research on this. I mean, there's plenty of it, but no one says that because we all just know, like, you just need to put in the effort and then over time evaluate that. If you have that short-term mindset, if you're skeptical thinking like, oh, this isn't scientific, then those things are going to be barriers for you and you're going to drop off and you're not going to get the results. So the conclusion here is that I've gotten to the point in my career, I've done this with so many people, that it feels less like I'm questioning what we're doing or the product. I almost never question that what we need to do. The reason people would fail is because the barriers to overcome and the hurdles to get there, and the individual is maybe not motivated like they should be, or maybe not able to put in the time or the effort or go through the process like there needs to be, and drops off. That's the equation is such that maybe the positives that need to be put in place, maybe we need to stack the number of positives so high and there's so many negatives that there's like drastic changes that need to be made. And then the length of time needs to be longer than they expect. So it's often an expectations game. And if the expectation is correct and we can have someone who has the motivation, we can get the equation to be positive, and then we can let time do its thing, then we can get the result we're looking for. And so when we enter into these relationships with people, just know, and this is why I have such confidence even on a podcast, is I'm almost never questioning the what is happening here. The framework that we lay out, and when we evaluate someone, it's usually very clear what needs to happen. It's those other pieces of the puzzle that lead to someone not having success in our process. Okay, now here's the call to action. If you just heard me talk about all that and you're like, hey, I'm motivated and this, like, I feel like I can do that, I can put in the time and I'm ready to make this change, then you are the person that we are going to be a good fit for. On the opposite end of that, if you're looking for a quick fix, if you need something that you're like, hey, I need to see that it works right away, otherwise I just can't do something else, like, that's okay. We do often get relief pretty quick with patients, but we also need someone who can stick with us, because you're going to have a bad week and then we're going to say, hey, we need to stick with this. And then we're going to get there. Okay. So if that sounds like you, if you're someone who can stick with a process, if you're ready to make change, if you're ready to make that equation a positive and then let time do its thing, I want you to reach out to us. You can book on our website, www.noveraheadachecenter.com. And we would love to hear your story and get started on this journey. Thank you all so much for listening to the Headache Doctor podcast, where as always, it's our mission to educate and empower everyone with headaches and migraines so that you can break free from a life of fear of your next headache or migraine and dependence on medication. I'll see you next week.